Welcome into the Bork Report on February 1st, 2025. I am your host, Bork. This is the fourth episode of the Bork Report, and excuse my voice if it's a little raspy or hoarse or I'm not talking quite as loud. I've been sick a little bit this past week, just trying to recover. Very phlegmy, so basically on the mend, but a little bit scratchy, a little bit phlegmy still on the vocal side of things. So, still wanted to get my episode recorded today on Saturday, February 1st, and get that out. Weekly cadence again. Just want to reiterate that I plan on recording at least some sort of episode every Saturday, at least 30 minutes to an hour, and get that out on Saturday. I do plan on getting some clips from my shows up on TikTok and other social media sites as well, just to get my word out a little bit. Maybe set up a little bit of a stream of people coming in to watch on a weekly basis, or at least staying up to date on those locations as well. And yeah, that's kind of it for housekeeping this week. Nothing super crazy with me being sick. Didn't get a whole lot of prep time or work or anything like that related to this done, but nonetheless wanted to still record and get that out there. So today's episode, really excited to talk about the games I beat in January. I beat 4 video games in January. That's kind of as many as I want to beat in every single month this year. Maybe one like mid-length 10 to 20, maybe a little bit longer game, and then a couple short games, and maybe there'll be one game that I'm playing throughout a couple months that's a longer RPG that takes 50 plus hours to beat. That's currently The Witcher 3 right now. So that's not included in today's because I'm not even close to finishing there, but it will be reviewed at some point. I think I'd like to have it done by the end of February. But as far as that goes, I'll jump into my reviews for the 4 games that I beat in January. And just to list those off, I beat Portal, the first one. I beat Resident Evil 4 Remake. I beat The Last of Us Part 2. And I beat Sifu. So those are the 4 games I beat. Been playing on and off a few other games this past month, and we'll get those reviewed either on an episode of the Bork Report or get those reviewed and done separately and just post those to YouTube, TikTok, whatever else I want to do there. But without further ado, I'll jump into the actual review process and kind of jumping into that. So I'll be reviewing games on a 10-point scale with half points included in that as well. I think, no one really wants to see a 20-point scale. That looks weird. So I think a 10-point scale with just half point increments works pretty well. And how I view ratings, just as a quick breakdown, is if I give something a 10 out of 10, I think that's nearly a perfect video game. There can be flaws, whether there's a lack of story or the gameplay or whatever. There can be some flaws in a 10 out of 10 in my opinion, but overall, I have to be enjoying it the entire time. The game has to function exactly as expected the entire time. The story has to blow me away, or the gameplay has to blow me away, or a mix of the two. Jumping down to like a 9, I think that's an excellent video game, but I think that there's clearly one area that didn't maybe connect with me, which kind of derives it from that 10 out of 10. It deprives it. 8, I think, is a great video game. That's a very common score that I give out. Anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 is probably my most common range. And that means that the game did it for me in almost every aspect, but there were definitely some things that were lacking, whether it's a repetitive gameplay loop or something like that, or I'll usually give some good reasoning as to why I think something's not higher than an 8 out of 10. 7, good video game, acceptable video game, very fun to play, but clear flaws, clear reasons why it doesn't get a higher rating than that. 6, I think, is okay. 5 is very mid, and anything below 5 really I think is just a bad video game, whether it just doesn't work as expected. That's the lower end of the scores, the 1s and 2s, or just very dull gameplay, very dull story, doesn't keep me engaged. So that's kind of where you're going. Basically, I don't really talk too much about 5 or belows. If I play one, I'll rate it and I'll give you the reasons why, but 6 is okay, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is excellent, 10 is flawless or near perfect. Um, it takes a lot to get out of 10 out of 10 for me. So I think last year, 2 games that I played, the only 2 that I would rate a 10 out of 10 were the Outer Wilds and Astrobot. So there's a high bar for me. Those games both did it flawlessly for me. Everything worked about those games. And while I could pick holes at certain things, I generally have to like think really hard about what those holes and flaws are. So that's my rating scale from a 0 to 10 scale. And jumping into the games I played in January, I'll start off with Portal. I started off playing a few other games. Resident Evil 4 was one of those games, and that was kind of a little bit of a longer game. So in the meantime, kind of in between sessions for Resident Evil 4 and The Witcher 3 and some other things that I was playing, I decided to throw Portal on. I bought it in the Steam winter sale for like $2 or $3. It was very, very affordable. And I guess I want to start these reviews with the score and then give my reasoning why. So I think Portal 1 is a 7.5 out of 10. I think jumping into the reasons for that score, I think that there are some clear flaws with the game. I think it's a little slow to start, only getting one portal gun for like the first entire hour, it felt like. But I'll just say that the story was fun. It was not anything super crazy, but the comedy was really good. It hit really well. And the puzzles were pretty damn good, even with the one portal gun for the first bit of the game. And with how short of a game it is, I would have loved to have had more access to the double portal gun from the start. But I understand it's kind of an ease you into it. And I think that after a certain point, the puzzles get pretty complex to the point where it was a really nice challenge for me who really enjoys puzzles. Overall, I just feel like there was a little something missing from Portal 1. I think, like I said, the gameplay was there. It was fine. I think it's a little clunky, like the ducking and picking up and holding things. I think it works really well. Physics-wise, the physics are incredible in the game. But just something was missing. I think it might have had to do with how short it was. I do plan on playing Portal 2 this year as well, probably this month, just to follow up on it. And I hope to be surprised with a little bit more depth, a little bit more story, maybe a little bit longer and more puzzles to do. But really solid game. 7.5 out of 10. Very good score in my eyes. I just hope, and I think, based on what I hear everyone else say, I think Portal 2 could be one of those games that goes up to the 8.5 or 9 range. So we'll see where that goes. Stay tuned, obviously, for a future review on that. But to summarize, I think Portal 2 being a 7.5 really comes down to just the shortness of the game. It makes it feel like it's missing a little bit something. The gameplay is fine, works really well. The physics are incredible. I think that's what really wins me over in this game, is just how good the damn physics are. When you go through portals, the speed up, the jumping off a cliff and flying through a portal and getting shot out the other end like a cannon. I think all of that works really well. And I think the comedy and writing in the game is really, really well done. So 7.5 out of 10 for Portal. Like I said, I started Resident Evil 4 Remake before Portal, but obviously with Portal being such a short game, I think it only took me, I tracked this down, Portal took me like 2.5 hours to beat. So not very crazy at all. I didn't do any of the extra levels. I do plan on doing those just for some fun puzzle things. But really I just focused on the main story and seeing how the gameplay worked and if I would be interested in playing Portal 2, which I am more than interested in playing Portal 2 now. So really excited to play that at some point. But like I said, started Resident Evil 4 Remake really early on in the year. I think I started it maybe at the end of last year and it trickled into January, but I've never played another Resident Evil game in my days. I've never played any of the newer ones, never played any of the older ones. As you may have seen on one of my last episodes, I am pretty much a Nintendo kid through and through up until I got the PlayStation in middle school and started playing Call of Duties and sports games and things like that. So really just kind of flew under the radar for me. And when I say Nintendo kid, obviously Resident Evil 4 was on the GameCube, but I was Mario, Zelda, Mario Kart, things like that. I was not the other kind of Nintendo gamer where you're playing like Metroid or, you know, Resident Evil or some of those other games that came onto the GameCube. So, but playing this game, everyone told me this is a great one to start with. I tend to agree. I think that everything about this game was really well done. I think it was paced super well. I think the gunplay was really solid in this game. What I do think kind of throws it off, maybe a little bit down, is just the fact that I've never played other Resident Evil games. I know Leon Kennedy is a recurring character, I think, from Resident Evil 2 is kind of what I gathered. And having not played that, I kind of missed some of the backstory into his character and his relationships with some of the other characters in the game as well. But nonetheless, the dialogue is super good. Leon is just a straight up badass. He's at every corner doing something cool. I just think of there's one scene that made me like laugh where the twins with the saws break through the wall and he just does a backflip for some reason. Puts his foot on the wall, does a backflip, and gets out of there, and then you end up killing those people. But just the way he conducts himself is so like nonchalant and badass that it's like endearing. And every time he talks, he's got some quippy thing. Obviously, everyone points to the bingo line at the beginning of the game. Where's everyone going? Bingo night? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever he says. It just kind of speaks to his character as a whole, and it's really, really fun. The graphics are incredible. I think that the boss fights in this game are pretty inventive as far as the way they, change up the gameplay and how that works. Obviously, there's like the river monster or the lake monster that you get drug around on the boat and you have to throw harpoons and shoot harpoons at him. There's the giant trolls or whatever you want to call them that you've got to defeat, and they kind of get different armor upgrades or things like that that make them, difficult to beat. I think that, as a concept, the kind of castle theme with the old school Spaniard, kind of evil villain is really cool, and how that's done, and Las Plagas and the plague basically turning these people into servants to mine and kind of become kind of a hive mind in a way. I think that's really awesome. But yeah, everything about the game was pretty damn cool. Just that's one of the best ways to describe it. I give this an 8.5 out of 10. And really, I think, just maybe it'll be a higher rated game for me down the line once I get some backstory, play some other Resident Evil games. I didn't really know what to expect going into this, but I also would love to play this game with more exploration. I didn't really backtrack to find collectibles, things like that. I found them as they came to me. I unlocked the maps and the ability to find collectibles, but really, I think there's a lot more to see and do in this game, and I want to do more of the shooting ranges. I think that'll be fun. So probably a game I'll end up picking up at some point again just to replay and kind of do it those ways. But as of right now, this just makes me want to jump into other Resident Evil games, and that's probably something I'll end up doing over the next year, 2 years, kind of fit it into my schedule. I think we'll probably get a new Resident Evil game this year. I feel like it's time. Capcom's due. It's been a while since Resident Evil 8. So, I don't know. Really good game, really solid mechanics, and, just I get the hype. I never played the old one. A lot of people say that this is pretty faithful and pretty much, what you can expect, outside of maybe some differences here and there. But really good game. Really, really enjoyed it. Jumping into The Last of Us Part 2. This was not a game I planned to play. And then I remembered that the second season of The Last of Us is coming out on HBO in April. And I was like, well, shoot, I need to play this game before that comes out. When the first season released, I'd never played the first one. And I think kind of at the time, my thought was I'll play alongside the series. And I ended up just beating the game really quickly because I was so engrossed with the story. And that's what this, comes down to. I am going to give The Last of Us Part 2 an 8.5 out of 10 as well. And I think that the story is the reason that it's rated so high. I think the story is incredible. I would say even better than the first. I think that the kind of revenge narrative is not a bad direction to go, just based on how this world works. of The Last of Us. I think that, you know, the human to human interaction in the game is the whole story. It's not even about the zombies or the apocalypse. It's those things fuel the human to human interactions, and having all these people that you're so close to now through this apocalypse, and losing those people kind of sets you off on this war path towards, righting wrongs and, you know, figuring out, how to live without them and what they would have wanted and how you would respond if this happened to you versus what happened to them. I think the Abby Ellie storyline is incredible, and the split gameplay between the two of them is super cool. Seeing, you know, obviously your first 3 days in Seattle playing as Ellie and kind of on this warpath to find Abby, finding her, kind of this really dramatic conclusion to those 3 days, and then boom, it kicks you back to the beginning, and then you play through those 3 days as Abby. I think allowing you to have your anger and your emotions fuel your gameplay as Ellie is super important, because, the whole point of that is her anger driving her towards this and basically, uh, you know, fueling her kind of tirade through the city of Seattle. Um, and I don't want to really jump into spoilers too much, because if you haven't played it, I would highly recommend it. If you've played the first but not the second, play the second, please. But and then once you get to the dramatic conclusion with Abby, I think it's then really, really cool that they pull the scene back to day one, and allow you to see the world through her lens. You think you know Abby, you think you have these preconceived notions of, oh, she's terrible, she's awful, I need to end her. And then being able to play those 3 days as Abby kind of makes you see that she's just as human as Ellie is. And, that kind of fuels her 3 days into helping the children that she helps and kind of straying from her, people basically that she's grown up with, and the whole reason she was set on her warpath in the first place through the Fireflies and then the Washington Liberation Front, and having her kind of fall out with all of that over the course of those 3 days, and then obviously the dramatic conclusion at the end of that, where you then jump forward in time a bit, and something about it, you see Abby's point of view, and you see Ellie still lusting for revenge and feeling like she's been slighted. The end of The Last of Us Part 2, with the dramatic fight between Abby and Ellie in the ocean right before the game ends. Again, won't spoil what does or doesn't happen. I think that's such a fitting end to the story here. And kind of, Ellie's realizations of what she's been doing, Abby's desperation to, get away from all of this, and obviously hopefully she'll reconnect with people from her past or reconnect with the Fireflies, is kind of her main mission, and kind of having it come to this dramatic conclusion in the ocean where they're fighting each other, and you kind of just realize that no one's in the right here, and they kind of realize that at the end. Abby, I think, had come to the conclusion long ago. That's why she lets Ellie live ultimately, and then Ellie comes to the same conclusion ultimately at the end there, but without getting into too many spoilers. Just a really phenomenal story. I think the reason it's not a 10 out of 10, I know a lot of people will rate this as a 10 out of 10, and that's because I just don't think the gameplay loop is that fun. That it's not fun. It's really fun. But I think it's too repetitive. I think every mission is just, walk around, loot as much as you can, shoot a few people, and go on to the next thing. And there's like a cutscene in between it. And it's just the same thing over and over again. I think the gameplay loop just generally is super repetitive. Not that it's a bad gameplay loop, because I played both of the games and I really love them. And if they make a third one and it's a lot of the same stuff, I'll play that too. But it definitely doesn't elevate itself, from a gameplay perspective, to be a 10 out of 10. I think that all of the little details in the gameplay are about as sound as they can be. I think the gameplay from a pure execution standpoint is a 10 out of 10. Just for me and my tastes, it just gets repetitive. The attention to detail as far as the physics, the graphics, the gunplay is really good. And then the sound design in the game and the visuals when you kill people, when you shoot people, the gore really makes you question if killing is the right path. As I was going through Ellie's, I was like, I think I know what I'm doing. I think what I'm doing is right. I'm going after the people that did this. And as I killed more and more people and I heard the reactions, I heard the screams, I heard the guttural cries from them as they bled out or whatever it was, I questioned all of it. And I'm like, man, Ellie kind of sucks. Like, Ellie is not a good person. And when I'm killing zombies, that's all fine and dandy. Give me all the gore, give me all the sounds, give me all that. But the humans, in an already dying world in an apocalypse, it's just hard to hear that sound design be so good. So shout out to the team at Naughty Dog for creating a phenomenal video game. I'd say a 10 out of 10 in almost every aspect, but just that repetitive gameplay loop really hinders my overall, you know, fuzzy, warm feelings of the game. I just think it's like, okay, I got to do the same thing over and over again. And obviously it's a different story to tell in each scene, but it's the same thing. It's loot, shoot, loot again, loot the dead bodies, go to the next thing, here's a cutscene, and then it's loot, shoot, loot the bodies, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to delve too much deeper into it than that, but 8.5 out of 10 for The Last of Us Part 2. I think that the story is better than the first game in almost every way, honestly. I think that the first game story is really good. I'd probably give that an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10 as well. I'd say that the games are pretty on par with each other as far as quality. That's what you expect from Naughty Dog anyways, but yeah, that's about all I've got to say there on the Last of Us Part 2. It's really, really good, but the gameplay lacks for me as far as being repetitive. Yeah. So jumping into my last review here is Sifu. Kind of a random last-minute game to pick up. I have had it on PlayStation Plus for a while. It was a free game at some point last year or the year before, I can't remember. And I've always heard really good things about it, and I really wanted to play it because I was looking for some sort of challenge, and I think, Kung Fu and fighting games like this where it's very snappy is something I was looking for, especially after playing like The Last of Us Part 2 and Resident Evil. Those are shooters. This one was really fun from a, beat 'em up standpoint. I am going to rate Sifu an 8 out of 10. I think that the gameplay, really, really solid. It's snappy. It's the buttons feel really responsive. The game is hard with the challenges presented to you, but I think it's very forgiving and fair at the same time. You understand why you got hit 99% of the time. Spoiler alert, for me, it's being greedy. I think I can get one more punch in, and I can't. I think that the parry system is pretty good in this game too. If you time things right, then it feels really snappy and good. The timing is not forgiving. You have to be on your shit to get parries correctly. And ultimately, the way they do the levels where it's a score system and you're trying to get a high score, I love that so much because I think that that's one of the things I really look for in a lot of video games is just how can I improve? How can I get better? And when you give me a specific score system that's so easy to understand, the more hits you get in without getting hit, the higher your multiplier goes, the more you knock out people, the higher score you get. That's understandable to me. That way I can go back, replay a level, try and get a higher score, and progress to the next level. I think the gameplay mechanic of age in this is really cool, where you are on a path for revenge after seeing your father get killed in the first scene. You go away for 8 years, and then you, in those 8 years, presumably learn Kung Fu, learn the trade, and then after you feel ready at the age of 20, you go out and try to get revenge on the 5 people that killed your master, your father, and doing so unlocks new abilities and getting higher scores and using your experience kind of opens you up to new things that you couldn't do before, new button combos, new ways to kind of train your gameplay with these new things and the old things that you know, as far as the basic punch combos, as well as the sweep kicks and the kind of slow-mo focus meter where you can do special attacks if you've built enough focus. Very, very cool. Everything about it rocks. It's exactly the kind of game I wanted and needed at the moment. It's just a really fun game to go back and replay levels and try and get higher scores there. But that, like, going back to what I was saying, the age mechanic, as you die in this game, you begin to age more. And the more you die, the more it kind of waterfalls into you aging really fast. And it's just basically a pendant that turns you a year older. Time doesn't actually pass, but you look older as you go through the game. And as you get every 10 years, you deal more damage, but you have less health. So you want to stay young to have more health, but then as you get older, the advantage you get for having more damage might propel you to the end in certain fights. So really cool on that front. I think I ended at on my actual final playthrough where I beat the last boss. I actually ended over the age of 70, which means if you die, you are dead. After the age of 70, if you die, it's a game over and you have to restart the level or go back and try and beat older levels to get through the newer levels at a younger age. So I barely scraped by. The game is challenging, but like I said, it's very forgiving as far as, I see why I get hit. I get greedy. I try and punch when I shouldn't. I need to be more patient, blah, blah, blah. It really trains you on that and makes it so you have to know what you're doing, know how you're playing, pick some specific combos and play styles, and execute at the highest level. So really, really solid. Like I said, 8 out of 10 for Sifu. I think that the lack of a major story is kind of the reason I don't give it a higher score than that. But the gameplay, I would say, is probably a 9.95 out of 10. And then the story is it's just there to serve, as a background component to the gameplay. It's not really the main focus. Obviously, it's your motivation for going through the game is I've got to beat the 5 people that killed my master, my father. But at the end of the day, it's not the reason you're playing the game. You're not playing the game for a compelling story. You're playing the game for arcadey high scores and improving your skills and getting better at the parry mechanics and the dodge mechanics and things like that to exploit your opponent's weaknesses. So really awesome game. I'll probably play this a little bit more as well. It's one of those games where it's kind of like, I kind of want to platinum this on PlayStation, but I don't know if I'm good enough to do that. And I would probably have to sink a lot of hours in to get good enough to do that. Because I think like one of the trophies in this game is beat the final boss under the age of 25. And like I said, I was 70 plus years old by the time I finally beat the final boss. It would take an insane amount of skill for me to beat him at that age. I think I went into the final level starting at age 33. So already, like, I've got to improve at previous levels to get to that point where I can even do that. So it might be a game I come back to in platinum, but it's not really a main priority for me because it's a tough game and I am just feeling really accomplished by beating it at all, which is kind of the point. It's one of those things that, just feels really satisfying. It's like a Souls game or Hollow Knight where you get your teeth kicked in 10, 15, 20 times, but then you start to learn the mechanics, learn how to dodge, learn how to parry, and bring it back to that. So really solid, really, really good game. But those are the 4 games I beat in January. To summarize games and scores: Portal, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. Resident Evil 4 and The Last of Us Part 2, I gave an 8.5 out of 10. And then the last game I beat in January was Sifu with an 8 out of 10. I would recommend all of these games. It's not like they're bad, and 7.5 is certainly a very good score still. It's between good and great for me, so don't think that I give a 7.5 because I think you shouldn't play it. I think anything I give a 7 or above is something that I think is worth playing in some capacity if it is a genre that you like. So With that being said, gonna round out the episode with a reminder on my release schedule just to close things out. I record and post on Saturdays, so come back every Saturday to see the latest episode. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Throw a comment in. I'd love to chat about, some of the things I talk about. If you have questions or if you have something to say, you like my reviews, you think they're shit, whatever, I don't care. And like I said last week, and it's something that I will prioritize hopefully while I'm not sick, but I do plan to start posting some of these clips onto social media, TikTok specifically, but YouTube Shorts, Instagram, all that stuff. So this has been episode 4 of the Bork Report. As mentioned, I am Bork, and I will see you next week.